This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's talk about some behind the scenes controversy. This is the August 5th edition of the Wrestling Observer. Quote, there is, or at least was, tremendous heat on Jim Cornette coming off the weekend tour, largely due to a backstage argument he had with Shawn Michaels after the match in Anaheim. Apparently, they had worked out a spot where Michaels was going to super kick Cornette, but Cornette either tripped or fell down, and Michaels super kicked Air, or I guess Michaels felt Cornette double crossed him on the spot. There were problems already between the two, stemming from something that apparently happened after the show in San Francisco. Anyway, after they went behind the curtain in Anaheim, Michaels immediately began yelling at Cornette about the spot, and Cornette began yelling back, and it became a big deal internally. I don't think you were at this show, but what do you remember hearing about this?
Just a unnecessary pissing contest. Cornette stood his ground, and Shawn looked to use his influence and where he was on the card and how he was perceived in the office, primarily by the chairman, as his trump card. So, but unnecessary. They blew their steam off, and hopefully, my role or my 2 cents in that was that they get it out of their system. That's no Bill Watts thing. It's like when Nord the Barbarian and Butch Reed got in a fight in Oklahoma City in the Sunday afternoon matinee. That's redundant, isn't it? On the Sunday afternoon show. And then they drove to Tulsa to do TV that night, faces all puffy and black eyes and so forth. And he made them fight again because he wanted to make sure he got out of their system. I think what he really wanted to do is see a good fight because he missed the original fight because he wasn't in Oklahoma City. So that's kind of the deal. Did they get it out of their system? It seemed like they did, but Shawn was in a tough time, and right then we all start making excuses for him. Well, it was this. It was he was on too much medication. He was drinking too much. He was influenced by the wrong people. Somewhere along the goddamn way, Conrad.
Yeah.
We have to stop and look in the mirror. And, Shawn's made a great life changes since that time, by, 180 degrees, which is wonderful. But he was not so easy to be around. He just was so frigging good. He was in that Flair conversation. When you say, who's the best 2 workers you ever saw? The old school guys will say, well, Ray Stevens, some of those cats. And I don't know, make an argument about that. But Shawn at that time was as good as anybody lacing boots. And he used that cachet to his advantage.
We should talk about Cornette here for a minute. It feels like, and I don't know, but it feels like around this era, maybe he started to tire of the WWF or the travel or living in Connecticut. And then eventually, of course, he's going to say, hey, let me go do something else. And thankfully, developmental becomes the thing. Is this really the first time you thought, man, Corny might not be having the best time?
No, it wasn't the first time. I knew that he was challenged. Living in Connecticut could be challenging. It's expensive. You have to be prepared for the weather and the ice and sleet, travel, the traffic, and blah, blah, blah. And so Corny wasn't having fun. And there was too many channels to go through. He was used to being an autonomous booker where he had an idea. Well, that idea is how it played out. And that was not the case in WWE. You had a lot of channels to go through. Vince had to improve it. He had to make, he had to bless it. Then he had Bruce there, a filter, Pat, a filter, me to a lesser degree, a filter. And so it was tough for him. But I knew that that his time there was not long-term. In other words, my advice to him would have been, I hope you're renting. Don't buy any real estate here.
Yeah.
Rent. And,
I bet JJ wishes somebody would have told him that.
Yeah. I felt bad about that. Bruce and I were running the show in South Africa when JJ bailed. And it was the same week that Shane McMahon and his lovely wife got married.
Yeah. And Vince thought the worst, right? And thought that maybe JJ was going to try to take it to the paper or Mushnick or something and ruin the big weekend. And of course that didn't happen. He was just going to WCW.
Yeah. And he got his pay cut, and he had a big nut to fill. He had a special needs child, and he had other young children. And so, and I think the world of JJ this very day, but he just couldn't do it anymore, Conrad. He hit the wall, and that's how he reacted. I don't know that was the best solution, but it was the solution that JJ felt at that time was the best for him. Quite frankly, that's not really all that matters. But Bruce and I were in, I remember Bruce going, these eyes are big, and he says, "You'll never believe what happened." What? You'll never believe it. I said, "Well, tell me, and I might believe it."
Right.
JJ quit. He had a blow up with Vince, and he walked out and he quit. And so, I could see Bruce's wheels turning because Bruce wanted that job. And I was really cool with my position. I didn't need the title. Over time, I got to where I took ownership of it, maybe too much. But it was startling news because we all figured that JJ was there for life, Conrad. He had his routine. He had his procedures he did. He was very well organized. I learned a lot from JJ. Being organized, taking calls from the talent as quickly as you can. Hopefully when they're on the line, not when you have to call them back. Nobody likes to be called back. And especially now, you ever send a text message? You probably send them to me sometimes, and I forget I have them.
Oh yeah.
And you want to record Monday morning? Nothing. And I see it. Oh yeah, I should tell Conrad I'm good. So, but that was the deal. We thought we thought JJ was a lifer, going to be there forever. That was a big deal for us, for him to leave, because we had to go try to take all the paperwork and everything he was executing, the contracts, et cetera, and it was we had to go through all that stuff. And I think there's where Bruce started to discover this might not be the gig for me. Now JR, he don't mind this deal. It's kind of what he likes. So Vince made two jobs. Bruce is vice president of talent relations, and I was vice president of wrestling business or something like that, something ridiculous. And so until it all worked out and leveled out to where Bruce is just going to primarily focus on creative, which is good management by Vince, because that you always try to do, Conrad. You do it every day, I'm sure. Yeah. If you don't, you should. People should be put in the positions that they can succeed. They shouldn't be put in positions where there's going to be a stretch or I don't know if they can make that. So Vince is smart in that regard, among other things, a lot of things. But he saw our strengths and he put us in our position to execute what our strengths were.
I think I had my timeline messed up. JJ leaves the next month. He leaves September of '96 when you guys are over in South Africa.
Okay.
Let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com. Let's do a question here, and then let's wrap up this SummerSlam 1996 episode. We're going to preview what's coming next week, and we got some other stuff. Hang tight. But Brian wants to know, Jim, was there a gimmick that Al Snow would say no to?
I never heard it. Al's an old school guy, man.
Yeah.
Al was getting booked, Conrad. Sure. He was getting booked, and he's getting paid fairly, and he's getting paid regularly. And Al, like a lot of guys, he's like Lawler in the sense that Al had rather wrestle than any other job within the wrestling business. So I don't know. He didn't turn nothing down but the covers, as my granny would say.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.